This is Mixed Critiques 374 through 377. This mix was sent in by Anthony. Alright, this guitar tone in the intro is kind of awful. Let's see if it gets better when everything else kicks in. It did not get better when everything kicked in.
Did I ever become so hollow? Was it the word that you made me swallow? I can't believe that I let you make a fool of me.
Okay, so the tones in general are not good, especially the guitar tone. The bass tone isn't great either. Yeah, it just feels like on the guitar and bass, you just scooped the crap out of the mids. Like, it feels like there's a good amount of low end in the bass, but like no mid-range, no upper mid-range. And the guitar, it feels like you could just cut out all of the low end. The drums don't sound terrible, but I mean, other than the tones, just the timing on all the performances is way, way off. Like, especially the vocals. Like, the vocals are not locking into the instrumentals at all. The guitar and the bass aren't really locking into the drums either, but it's not as apparent as how far off the vocals are.
And what shall I say? Help me find a way.
All right, you guys need to see this. This is what the frequency response of this song looks like. You see this massive fucking scoop here? Like, okay. Of course, don't mix with your eyes. Mix with your ears. But this is a good visual aid to just show you what the fuck I'm talking about. Generally, the way a frequency response of a good sounding mix is, you got a little more low end in it, like there is here. And then it's kind of like a steady decline all the way to the top end. A good mix does not have this. Now the vocals are filling up the mid-range a little bit, so if I boost this right here to show you how it's going to sound, it's going to make the vocals sound weird. But just listen to how much better the instrumentals sound when I try to fix this.
Help me find a way. See another day where I can be okay. Throw this all away. And now finally free. And change loose and free.
Fix that shit. I don't know how many times I gotta say this, guys. Like, stop EQing shit so early in your mix. Spend more time getting a balance with the faders before you touch any plugins. That is the best advice I can give anybody watching this video right now. Spend more time working on the balance of the faders, just the volumes of the individual tracks, before you start fucking with it with plugins. This mix was sent in by Benjamin. Alright, overall it's not too bad so far. I felt like the intro was a little bit long. You probably could have gotten the same effect a lot shorter and had it not get as boring and drawn out by the end of it. Everything's feeling a little scooped, especially like the low end of the guitar. Like, you're definitely missing a little bit of low end in the guitar. But overall it's not bad so far. Yeah, so the bass and the guitar feel a little bit scooped. The drums feel a little bit dark. I feel like you're missing a lot of top end in the drums. But, like, those are really my main things here. I feel like, you know, you probably could have had a little more energy in the performance than you have here. But, like, overall, this isn't the worst mix. It's a hell of a lot better than the last critique I just did. So, overall, not bad, man. Like I said, the bass and the guitar are a little bit scooped in the mids. You could definitely use a significant amount more top end in the drums. But, like, those are my main issues here. Overall, this isn't terrible. This mix was sent in by Gabriel. All right, you got some really harsh high frequencies in the intro here, especially whatever the hell you had that like panned from left to right. That was a little on the harsh side. Even the vocals here have a little bit too much of those like painful upper mid frequencies. All right, the bass and the guitar tone are decent, but I can tell you almost definitely did not put new strings on this bass before recording. They sound like old dead strings. So considering that, pretty solid tone. If you had just slapped some new strings on there right before recording this with the exact same tone, that bass would sound a lot better. But the guitar tone doesn't sound bad either.
I can tell by the way you look that you don't understand what's wrong.
All right, the vocals I feel like are a little too far out front. Maybe that's because the guitar kind of dropped out here at the same time. But in general, I think the vocals are probably just a little bit too far out front. They also feel really, really dry to me, which I mean, I guess is a stylistic choice, but I feel like given what's going on here, we pretty much just have kick drum, bass, and the vocals going. I would definitely want a little bit more space in the vocals. So just like a little bit of delay, a little bit of reverb. Obviously be careful that it doesn't like overpower it and get super muddy, but I feel like the vocals are a little bit too dry here.
Tell by the things you do that you won't be here for too long.
All right, there's actually the tiniest bit of delay on it, but I feel like it either needs to be a little bit longer or have like a little bit of feedback into the delay. Not much, but a little bit, just to make it sound a little bit fuller.
Keep running out of road, keep running out of things to say. On the road by the river, she will make you shiver, she will make you shiver inside. Down on the track where there ain't no looking back, round and round she goes till she dies.
All right, overall, I think your biggest thing here is you've over EQ'd things a little bit, especially the vocals. The vocals feels like you cut a lot out of it, probably trying to make it fit with everything else. But in general, it feels like you probably over EQ'd some things. And I think the reason you did that is because the balance of things is off. Like, the bass and the vocals are a little too far out front compared to everything else. Like, clearly it's supposed to be a little bit more of a bass-heavy song, but just like, I don't know, it feels like the volume of everything compared to each other just could have been dialed in a little bit more. And I think had you spent a little more time with the faders and dialed in the volume of everything a little bit better than you did here, you probably wouldn't have had to use as much EQ and everything would probably sound a lot fuller. This mix was sent in by John. All right, man, so overall, it's not too bad. You have some interesting stuff going on here. Like, it's a vibe, but I mean, it feels like you definitely went overboard with the time effects. Like, everything feels just a little bit washy, a little bit muddy. especially in the low end. Like, you should have at the very least cleaned up the low end of the time effects with some EQ, because just it feels like we have an overwhelming buildup of low end frequencies across everything. Even in the beginning, when it was pretty much just the guitar, even then it felt like we had a big buildup of low end. And I'm assuming that's probably because of what the reverb is doing to the low end. So, I mean, this is why I generally tell people to put their reverb on a bus rather than directly on the track, is so that you can then EQ just the reverb. So if you have a reverb on a separate bus and you have everything being sent to that reverb, then you can throw an EQ on the bus after the reverb and just take out a good amount of that low end, and it cleans things up a lot. It prevents massive low end buildup. It prevents things from getting too washy, too muddy. So far that's your main issue. Other than that, I feel like there's some balance issues going on here, but we're going to keep listening. I mean, this lead guitar here, I definitely would have brought that up in volume a little bit. I feel like the drums overall aren't really peaking out over the top of everything enough. So that could be solved by bringing the drums up in volume, but you might also want to just add a little bit of top end onto the kick and snare. Then I also feel like you probably cut a little bit too much low mids out of the guitar. I feel like the guitar isn't really blending with the bass the way that I would normally want the guitar to blend in with the bass. It just feels like there's a noticeable separation between the bass and the guitar. And obviously, yeah, they're different instruments, they're playing different parts. Like, you want to be able to distinguish each of them, but especially in the mid-range, especially in the low mids, you really want the bass and the guitar to blend together at least a little bit, because that gives you a much fuller sound overall. But other than those things, again, your biggest problem is just the massive amount of low-end buildup across the track. It's probably just a result of the effects that you've added, but you might also have to EQ things out on the individual track. But if you don't have your reverbs on a separate bus, definitely do that so you can then throw an EQ on just the reverb and prevent that low-end buildup.